We are live. We're live.
And rolling.
AC's already in here. Lucas is already here. Carrie's in. Boys, people jump over here fast. Let's go.
Wow. Hey, Rick, Lucas, and AC. Cool. All right,
So,
sir.
Lucas, by the way, and his wife Chantal just had a baby girl like 2 days ago. And we've all been celebrating together
Okay.
in the comment section. So they welcomed a newborn baby girl,
All right. Way to go.
Nazareth. I believe her name is Nazareth. So congratulations, Lucas and Chantal.
Yep. I'm sure you'll be getting some sleep in about 5 years.
Yeah, right. I think this is their fourth or fifth child, so they know.
Oh, forget it. Yeah. Who am I even talking to?
Yeah.
So,
Hello,
how are you,
Joel.
sir? Again, the Gandalf look is getting a
Very good.
little more, although not quite
I
as
w- I
Gandalf
do
as it used to be.
I do intend to shave, but yeah, actually, it's continuing, and I will have a long beard
All
at
right.
some point. We'll see.
Oh, okay. We'll look forward to
It,
that.
well, it takes a little more determination on my part. My wife is not. She's not into the hair, and she's not into the facial hair, and so I can't do. Eventually, I'll break her down and I'll let the whiskers grow. It's temporary. I keep reminding her, honey, I'm not doing this for the rest of our lives. Trust me,
All
I'm
right.
just doing it temporarily. We'll
Okay.
go back to my short-haired, handsome self eventually.
Eventually.
Okay, Joel.
Yes, sir.
Let's get started. All right. I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the subject, the topic. So
Well, yeah, what I want to
I
talk
do want to delve into this.
Yeah, I think it's a increasingly more important topic. I don't know if anybody out there is familiar with Alistair Begg. He's been an influential pastor for a long time now. He has a radio show, and he's generally a pretty solid biblical teacher. But he was on a radio show, and he was giving counsel to a lady who called in to ask if she should attend her grandson's, can I use phraseology here? A certain kind of wedding that is new and different these days. Begins with a
Yeah,
T.
boys pretending to be girls and girls pretending to be
Yes, that
boys.
kind of thing. And he asked if she should attend, and his response was pretty pretty interesting. He said, first of all, he did some qualifications. He asked her some questions. He goes, "Does your grandson know that you're a Christian?" And she said yes. And does he know that you can't, I think used the word, does he know that you can't countenance such behavior in such a situation because your faith? She said yes, he knows that. And then he kind of shocked everyone and said, well, then I think you should go to the wedding and I think you should bring a gift. And even the grandmother was a little taken back. And so then when he was pushed a little bit on it, he said, well, here's the thing. He said, if you don't, then it'll just reaffirm in their minds that you can't countenance anything and you're one of these judgmental, meany Christians. And that's the justification for actually going to the wedding and bringing a gift. And that's caused a huge controversy. And I think the radio station, last I heard, the radio station reached out to him and said, do you want to retract that or do you want to recant that at all? And he said, no, I'm sticking to it. And so I think they eventually, I think they've taken him off the air now. So it's a situation where it's a difficult topic for some reason for Christians to talk about this. And I think it gets back to what Alistair Begg said. We're afraid of being seen as big meanies, of not embracing this kind of thing. Even though he asked her, does your grandson know where you stand? And she said, yes, he knows where I stand. Well, then he essentially said, then cave into him and go, So that's been the controversy in the Christian community for the past week or so. And if you're not familiar with it, I know a couple of people said they're not familiar with Alistair Begg. He's very good biblical teacher, and he's been very solid. This caught everyone by complete surprise because he has been so biblically solid, and it was just an unexpected event, and so that's kind of what I just wanted to bring to the table, see what everyone thought.
Well, I have heard of Alistair Begg. However, I can't say I've ever listened to him, and so I take your word that he's
He's got a cool Scottish accent.
Oh, yeah. So take your word that he's generally a sound biblical teacher.
Yeah, and Mitch
And
Nelson says he's been blessed by some of Alistair Begg's teaching and morning devotions. Yeah,
right, and that is so here we are with one of those rubber meets the road kind of moments, right? It's like
yeah,
what is happening in our culture? We have to make these kinds of decisions. People are not everybody all the time, but people are faced with these kinds of decisions. Am I condoning this? Here's an event I've been invited to. I love my grandson and I want to be a blessing and an influence in his life, and he is marrying a man that thinks he's a woman or
right.
something. It's like and so I am aware of this issue only because, as you and I are both fans of Doug Wilson, so Doug Wilson, I think a couple days ago, addressed his blog directly at this issue, calling out Alistair Begg. And I love how Doug Wilson does it. It's important. It's important that we all understand that this is not a heretic, right? This is not some false teacher. Alistair Begg is no false teacher. He's within the fold, right? He's within orthodoxy, and he's a friend, and he's a believer and a brother that we're going to spend eternity with. However, Doug is calling him out on that this is the wrong counsel, that he gave the wrong counsel, and I'm a Wilsonian acolyte, if you will. I am on his side on this. That essentially what Doug's position was: if abstaining from going, or if refraining from going to this ceremony is a statement of non-endorsement, right? If refraining from going, then going is an endorsement, right, of this particular event. This is a wedding, right? It's the
Right.
event itself. If it was just a birthday party, that's something different. Yeah, go take a gift, but to endorse this as a sacred uh, sacrament of holy matrimony, by showing up, you are endorsing a paganism, right? Endorsing a sinful act, and that's Doug Wilson's point. It's like it's again, if your son or your grandson wants to invite you out to dinner, yeah, absolutely, his loved one, the person that he wants to spend his life with, absolutely go and meet, but to show up and bring a gift and participate in the nuptials is unbiblical, or is that slippery slope, right? You're sliding
Sure.
into your we don't want to be Christians to be seen as mean and intolerant. Well, we are intolerant of sin, right? We must be intolerant of this slide that our culture is sliding towards or into and embracing within the church. You can't endorse these kinds of things. So I'm on the Doug Wilson side, but Alistair Begg has doubled down, so I hear.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, which is sad. And I don't think it really goes. I see more than one thing happening here. And I know somebody said, brought up the love the sinner, not the sin argument. We have to define, first of all, what love means. And we can't let the world define for us what love means. Because if you just look at the questions that he asked, and I really encourage everybody to find the audio or the video and watch it so you know for yourself. But when Alistair asked those questions, does your son know where you stand? Does he know you can't countenance this? Yes, yes, he knows that. Well, why in the world would he expect you to come to his wedding then? Why? There's first of all, the grandson is not looking for love here. The grandson is looking for grandma to affirm what he knows grandma can't affirm. So he's not acting in love towards his grandma. That's for sure. But okay, so we don't put that love expectation on the world. But at the same time, just because grandma doesn't go to your wedding doesn't mean she doesn't love you. As a matter of fact, it probably means she loves you enough to offend you and not to let you manipulate her into basically endorsing something that she believes is a sin against the most holy God. That's the other part of it. What do we really believe? Do we really believe this is as bad as we say we do? Do we really, or the Bible says it is? Do we really believe this kind of thing that's taking over our society? How bad do we really think it is? To where, oh, we can, oh yeah, I can't countenance that. But I don't want you to, and Alistair's question first goes, does your grandson know you can't countenance this behavior? Yes. Well, you should go to the wedding. Otherwise he'll think you're someone who can't countenance this behavior. It's circular, not logic. That's not even logical. So we're completely unprepared for this cultural moment right now, because for years we've avoided, and this is all, the slippery slope started years ago, decades ago, with when we were accepting, all these things we've tried to love the sinner for, but really we haven't been. We've been caving to their demands that we accept them and actually endorse them. And now we're at the point where we can't even, we either acquiesce to it and accept it, or we just completely avoid the subject altogether. And there's been very little teaching from the pulpit and evangelical circles for the last 20 or 30 years on these subjects. And because people just want to avoid them because they don't want to look mean, and they don't, we want to somehow tell the world that we love them so much that we're willing to let them go to HE double hockey sticks.
Yeah, it's this, well, and this is kind of Doug Wilson goes in this direction. It's the feminization of the church, right? It's well, we want to be,
right.
We want to be polite. We want to be, we want to be caring and gentle and kind. Yeah, but when the righteous standards of the Lord are being blatantly violated, the Lord's not kind about those kinds of things, right? Rather, he's wrathful. I think of Jesus, right? I think about what Jesus, we have this mentality, unfortunately, that Jesus was this gentle, meek, mild, loving, let the children come. Yes, let the children come and sit on my lap. Yeah, but he also fashioned a whip and got up on tables and shouted, right? And screamed, my father's house, right?
Right.
It wasn't, oh, this is my father's house. You guys are
you brood of vipers, you.
Yeah. You brood of vipers. Please get out. Please stop.
Yeah.
Like, please stop. No, that's not. Jesus was screaming, and I believe his jugular was throbbing, right? As he's in his father's house, turning over. It's an acre of tables. It's not just a couple of tables in the entrance. Like, he was raging with a whip in one hand. And what is that whip? He's whipping people, right? He is enraged at the body of believers, for people are supposed to hold his house sacred, right? He's not going to be not going to be sitting there saying, oh yes, I established marriage between a man and a woman, and you are in direct violation of that. And okay, no, no, not at all. But it's this slippery slope.
Yeah. And even then, that's something, Jesus reserved for the people who were, we say he entrusted the temple to, that were entrusted with the running of the temple. That's God's house. His wrath was directed at them. Well, and it's true. We have a different standard, obviously, of those are people of the house of the Lord and those who are not. So unregenerate people, we don't have the same moral standards on them that we do for each other, basically. But also on this love the sinner thing that I'm seeing come up in the comments. Again, we have to define what love means, and we also have to look closer at what Jesus said. Jesus told his disciples to love one another. By your love for each other, the world will know that God sent me. We have a responsibility to love each other. We also have a responsibility to tell the world that God loves them. We don't really have a strong imperative to love the world. We're to love our neighbor, love whoever God brings on, across our way, like the Good Samaritan. But really, our responsibility to love is for each other, so the world will see how unified we are, and it'll be attractive to them. They'll want to know who this Jesus is that these people worship, and how strongly they love each other, and how their lives are. But when we love the world, first of all, we're not supposed to love the world or the things of the world. So what's the line? What's the fine line? And to Alistair Begg's credit, he did say it's a fine line, but I just think he's on the wrong side of the line.
Yeah.
We don't love the world by telling them lies, basically, or affirming their lies or affirming their rebellion against God. That's not loving. That's not loving the world. So again, what do you do? How do you love the world? How does this woman love her grandson? If she goes and celebrates something that she believes is going against God, the holy God's command, and maybe it's we don't know who God is either. We don't really know who this God is that we follow. If we think, oh, it's more important to go to this horrendous thing in God's eyes and affirm it than it is to be seen as someone who wouldn't go to something like this. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I remember, because it's not that long ago when this whole gay marriage became federal law. I remember it was Barack Obama, when he ran for president, was opposed to gay marriage, right?
Oh,
Barack
yes,
Obama,
he was.
right? It's just 2008.
Yes, he played another certain Christian pastor for a fool, didn't he? Remember where that was? Do you remember where that was that he said that?
No.
And who was moderating that?
I don't remember.
The Purpose Driven Life.
Warren. Dr. James Dobson.
No, Rick Warren. It was at Rick Warren's church. It was between him and John McCain. And he was talking about this, and Barack Obama said, no, defining marriage is above my pay grade. And he didn't mean it, I don't think.
Well, yeah, he was reading the room. Yeah. As every slimy politician is wont to do. But I remember that when that was happening, and how, one of the arguments was, well, it doesn't really affect you on who loves who, etc. But I was like, wait a minute. The word marriage, right? I'm a married man. I am recognized by law, right? It's an institution by law. It's a legal representation. It's an entity that comes into existence, right? A man and a woman married are a unique entity. We're no longer individuals. We're recognized by law. and so when that definition changes, my status changes, right? If the very definition of what marriage means changes, it affects me, even though it's somebody else, man marrying man, woman marrying a woman. The word marriage has never meant that, right? It's by definition, marriage is a man and a woman. And to change the very definition, and that's what had me up in arms. I was like, wait a minute, you are changing the meaning of words. If they're going to be recognized by the law as this some institution, it's different than marriage, right? It's not, because you would have to completely destroy the definition. So call it something else if you as a nation want to recognize these civil unions, right? That's what they were
Right.
prior to that. But why change definitions? Why take it away from me, right? Why take
Right.
what is meaningful to me? And then, like Ben Shapiro was making an argument about, well, if it's the state recognizing it anyway, it's different than the church recognizing it. It's something civil, a civil union, a civil marriage. And I'm like, okay. At that time, I was like, okay, I understand that argument. The state shouldn't, recognize my marriage. It's really the church. But then I'm like, wait a minute, no, that's not. I don't agree with that anymore. I mean, I don't lie. I don't adhere to Ben Shapiro's argumentation there. The state is an entity recognized by God, right? God is above the state, right? And so that doesn't fly, right? That state recognize whatever it wants. It's like, no, God is above the state, and God is the one who gives the state its authority and its sovereignty and its power, and God would not change the definition, something that He created, right? God created marriage as a union between a man and a woman, period. Yes. And so that's when that slippery slope, and now, and it's not, oh, well, let's go along to get along, right? Let's just accommodate so that they'll see that we're kind and we're accepting, and it's the kindness of God that leads people to repentance. It's like they are not interested in repentance. They're interested in destroying your institutions.
Yes.
They're it's not that they just want this one concession. No, they want to undermine everything that Western civilization is built upon.
Right. And they want to undermine the church. They want to undermine the church. Actually, that's why they have a flag. Right. And if you see that flag hanging from a church, that is a flag of conquest.
Right.
That's not a flag of acceptance. That's a flag of conquest. And they know it. We don't. And it's interesting. You said also, I've heard the argument, well, on the marriage thing, well, it doesn't matter who you love. You should love who you love. Well, believe it or not, love and marriage are not the same thing. Right?
Yeah.
I could love a lot of people. I'm a married man. I love my wife. That doesn't mean I can't love someone else. It doesn't mean I can't marry someone else. Just because I love someone doesn't mean I can marry them. And that's never been the definition of marriage, not who you love. Yes, you can love whoever you want, but you can't marry whoever you want. If you're already married to someone, you can't marry another person. Because the definition of marriage is a man and a woman, by definition of marriage, what you just said, you can't marry someone of the same gender or the same sex. We think, like I said, we want to be so nice. And one of the things, when you mentioned feminization of the church, I've worked with a guy named Dave Murrow, who has a ministry called Church for Men, and he talks a lot about this. He wrote a book called Why Men Hate Going to Church. He knows that the church is probably 65-35 women versus men now. And he said, why is that? And one of the reasons is the church is afraid to take a stand. Men, who said the thing about the biker back here, Lucas, the biker of Christ, told importance of not letting the church castrate you. Okay. And be a man. This is part of it. This is part of why we're at this point. And I think Doug did mention that in his talk too. It's also what was so disappointing about this, and this is what my first reaction to, and I noticed that Doug Wilson said the same thing. This was an unforced error by this pastor, by Alistair's part. First of all, he contradicted himself, and then he went out there and decided to say this in the midst of what is really a battle for the church's survival here in America. And that's why everyone's so up in arms about it. We can't keep ceding ground because that flag is coming. It's coming for your church. And what's your plan to keep your church from having that flag in its window?
That's
What did
a perfect, I'm glad you mentioned that, the flag, because I remember it just kind of came home to me one day because I had my eldest child is on the other side of this issue, right? And is, you know, she's coming around, but I remember at this time she was still in high school at the time, and we were driving to church one morning, and I remember just making the statement, saying the agenda, right? The LGBTQ alphabet agenda is not. It's not about freedom. It's not about rights. They would. Their goal is to throw our pastor. We're on our way to church. I mentioned our pastor. Their goal would be to that to throw our pastor in jail if he refused to perform a gay wedding. Right? That's their agenda, is to make it illegal for pastors to deny. Right? If somebody came to him and said, "Will you marry us?" and he said no, their goal is to throw him in jail. And my daughter's response was, "Why would he say no?" I was like, "Oh,
Got some work to do.
right?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh Lord, oh Lord." My children are wards of the state. It was just this moment of a failure, of grief, of and of eye opening. I'm like, oh, they are making great gains and progress
Yeah.
in the minds of the youth,
Mhm.
uh, and that's really where it is. That's where the battleground is.
Yeah.
Now
And
my
it's going to
daughter
be,
has a man in her life, and I think this might be the one, right?
oh, okay. There you
So
go.
she's going in the right direction.
All right. Well, and I think that's what it's going to take. And I think it gets right down to, uh, like I said, what do we believe? Who do we believe God really is? What to believe? We really believe following Him means, and are we willing to pay that cost? Because if we're not willing to pay the cost of them thinking we're mean, then we're really not going to be able to pay the cost of them putting our leaders in jail. If we can't even handle their disapproval, oh, you're being mean. Um, if we can't handle that kind of pressure, then when the real pressure comes, we're not going to be able to hold up at all. And you know, this is part of the cost of being following Christ. Jesus said there would be a cost, and
Yeah.
people will say all kinds of awful things against you because of me. We forget that phrase, but He told us this would happen. He said,
Yep.
the world's going to hate you. They're going to say all kinds of awful things because of me. And then, so we live our lives, and when the world hates us and says all kinds of awful things, we're like, oh, we must be doing something wrong.
On
No,
the contrary, we're doing
on the
something right.
contrary, you're right where you need to be.
Yeah.
If the world thinks you're this intolerant person who can't countenance their sin, yeah,
Nice
okay,
is such a pernicious word.
it is. That's the 11th commandment. Thou shalt be nice.
Yeah. We need to be mean for Jesus.
Hey, you know,
Be mean for Jesus. Obviously, it's context determines meaning. Um, I'm curious to see, where this goes, because I'm actually going back to Idaho to visit the folks up there in about a month to return. I made really good inroads in my friendships there, and one of the people that I visited said, "Hey, when you come back, you can stay with us." And I'm like, oh, that's it's a cost, right? It's a sacrifice for me to go there, and that helped. That helped with the cost. I'm like, all right, I'm on my way.
cool,
So I'm looking forward to that.
good deal. Keep us informed. Keep us
I will.
updated.
And I'm supposed to be interviewed by your friend here within the next week or so.
Oh,
He
okay.
wanted to do the interview yesterday, but that's one of my days at the office, so we're rescheduling.
All right, Jeremy, right?
Yes. So looking forward to that.
All right.
Well,
I'm
it's good
looking
to see
forward
you,
to it too.
Joel, filling
Yeah.
in for Ben here last minute.
Yeah,
Glad I could make it. Next time you see Ben, tell him I said hi.
I will. I will. So
now it's time for me to get to work. Good to see everyone in there.
everyone, good
Bye,
discussion,
everybody.
guys. Good comments.
God
Thanks
is in control.
Thanks, Michael.
I will see you next time.